Born on March 23, 1987, in a fishing bog in Sweden, Campbell was raised by her parents, Ingrid and Joachim, who characterized her as a curious, gregarious, and joyful young woman. Her early instructors also noted that she was extraordinarily creative and an inspiration to her fellow classmates. Kim's family traveled frequently due to her parents' journalism career, which allowed her to see a lot of the world when she was a small child. Kim stated that she spent a lot of her early years traveling or working in newsrooms, which must have had some kind of influence on her, as she later became a freelance writer and had her writing featured in publications like Vice, The Guardian, and The New York Times. After earning a bachelor's degree in international relations from the London School of Economics and Political Science, she proceeded to pursue a master's degree in both international affairs and journalism at Columbia University. Her acquaintances claimed that she was naturally tenacious and skeptical, which made her a good fit for the media field. She also didn't mind putting herself in danger to get an important story done, which allowed her to report from numerous locations around the globe, including as North Korea and Paris war-affected Sri Lanka. Kim enjoyed sharing anecdotes from the periphery of society that addressed international policy, social difficulties, and the wild antics of eccentrics, frequently mentioning issues of equality. And for that reason, she started chasing after Danish inventor and minor celebrity Peter Madsen. Born in 1971, Peter grew up in the small Danish town of Shady before attending primary school in the town of Home. He developed an interest in rocket fuel and launched his first big rocket in 1986, but it only made it 100 meters before it crashed fairly safely, earning him the nickname Rocket Madsen. He so obviously met Val's requirements for an interview candidate. He was a self-confessed extreme machine enthusiast and ambitious geek who aspired to turn Denmark into a rocket manufacturing powerhouse. If you couldn't assist him in fulfilling his aim, nothing would stand in his way. It was his life ambition. To him, you were essentially invisible. Peter did grow up in a challenging environment. Karl, his father, wasn't the best man. He was employed in Nazi Germany. In addition, he mistreated Peter and his brothers severely and wed Annie, a considerably younger lady. When their time came to an end, Peter made the decision to live with his father Karl and stop communicating with his mother. Thomas, Peter's biographer, who was pursuing her and had a good friendship with Peter, stated that he thought the reason why Peter had such a strong dislike of women was because of that encounter. Prior to delving into the events that transpired, I believe that the case's location contributes to its surprising nature. Peter's workshop was situated on Rest Island, a neighborhood in Copenhagen where Kim was staying with her boyfriend. Furthermore, people generally see Denmark, Sweden, and Scandinavia as being extremely safe regions. In fact, Denmark is ranked 4th on the World Peace Index. I apologize. It's easy to see why Kim trusted Peter so much. Her danger was only a stone's throw away. Peter was. Really, there was nothing amiss about him. His criminal history was clean. He was also regarded as something of a mini-celebrity in the community. In other cases, he was even likened to Elon Musk, which is a reach in my opinion. Just to put things in perspective though, Peter wasn't really focused on his rockets at the time this incident occurred in 2017. It was on the 3rd submarine he had named, her primary submarine. Kim wasn't as fascinated in the submarine as she was when you saw 3 Nautilus. She had been attempting to get an interview with him for months, according to his rocket projects. She was also aware that she still had a captivating tale to tell about the submarine. Thus, on August 10, 2017, Kim and her partner Oleg were scheduled to have a farewell party because they would shortly be relocating to China for an amazing career opportunity. However, the party was scheduled for the afternoon. Kim decided to forego her own party in order to take advantage of the opportunity to interview Peter on his submarine after receiving an unexpected text from him asking if she could go and interview him on his new submarine. This just goes to show how passionate she is about her work. Kim then makes the short trek to Peter's workshop in order to, I suppose, get a head start on the interview process. She then returns to her boyfriend to inform him that she had successfully arranged an interview with Peter and that they would be spending the evening together on the submarine. However, she only planned to stay gone for a few hours, and she anticipated returning before the end of the celebration. Kim was the first to accept Peter's invitation to interview on the submarine, even though he had already asked 3 or 4 other women. At 7 o'clock that evening, she left her party early and went to buy his submarine. Kim texted her lover a few times as they set out on their journey, telling him, "I'm still alive, by the way, but I'm going down now. I cherish you." It resembles a series of exclamation points. He also brought cookies and coffee. Yes, and they would be Kim's final texts to transmit. In addition, pictures of him and Peter sailing away on the submarine approximately 90 minutes after they boarded were shown. It's especially significant because these are Kim's final ever pictures. She also has such a serene appearance. Between 7 and 10 o'clock at night, she smiles. Kim's boyfriend used to text her several times without ever getting a response. Furthermore, the fact that she was only supposed to stay on the submarine for a few hours made it extremely concerning. She was supposed to return in time to see her own party through to the end. But I did start to get worried around 10 p.m. when he still hadn't heard anything from her. The submarine was detected at midnight near the northwest end of the Harrison Bridge, but sadly, no satellite monitoring was available, and no one was able to notify Peter. They alerted the Coast Guard to their worries a few hours later, at 2:30 a.m. Around that same period, reports of Kim and Peter being missing were made. An hour or so later, the Danish police issued a warning that there might have been an accident at sea and began looking for the submarine. Not until 10:30 in the morning, that a rescue helicopter was dispatched as soon as the submarine was finally seen on Colgan Bay from a nearby lighthouse. When the helicopter discovered Peter standing atop the submarine, he immediately established contact with him using the proper radio and reported that everyone was safe on board. Not long after, the reporters were informed by the rescue helicopter that the submarine was indeed sinking and that someone had jumped into the ocean, been rescued by a fishing boat, and was carried to the port of the jungle. Peter turned out to be this individual. Thus, the police and media greeted him upon his arrival at the dock, and he allegedly told a journalist at this time that he was the sole one on board when the tragedy occurred, and that the submarine had sunk due to something like a valve failure and the ballast tank. He claimed that at 10:30 p.m. he had dropped Kim off at Rush Hour Island. However, this is later shown to be false because Kim, the precinct's restaurant owner, was dumped off. This gave authorities access to copious CCTV evidence, proving Kim was never present. She was never left behind. By now, rumors were circulating that Kim had suffered some sort of trauma following her escape from the submarine. However, as the day wore on, questions surfaced among investigators and others acquainted with Kim Lieutenant Commander. Had he passed away? The day the submarine vanished, Borg, a Danish Navy commando, was called in to help in his capacity as Chief Engineering Officer of the submarine. They also claimed that as the submarine sank, they became suspicious right away and remarked, quote, "A submarine doesn't sink like that. He could have saved it." They recommended that Madsen be taken into custody by the police so that they could investigate the matter right away. Peter was also behaving a little strangely. He appeared worn out. He appeared to be hiding something and was disheveled. Perth Rescue Peter, according to his biographer Thomas Jasing, was simply not acting like the Peter he usually was. He wasn't speaking in the same way as he usually would have in this situation. "Calm down," he urged. I could see Peter saying, "I'm really depressed. My work's main jewel is now submerged beneath the ocean. However, this is the railroad. It ought to be completed in style." And he would speak in such lofty terms, he would write poetry. Obviously, a massive search is currently in progress for Kim, who is still missing. Kim's phone is being sought after by the Swedish police, who have become engaged in the situation. Because they believe Kim might have been on the submarine when it sank, the Danish Navy has now become involved and is currently attempting to locate the sub via the ocean. They descended, found the submarine, and used GoPros to explore the area. They were able to determine that there were no survivors on board by peering out the windows, but because of its location on the seafloor, they were never able to actually access the submarine. As all of this is happening, the search is still active on August 11th at 5:44 p.m. Preliminary charges are essentially a step before official charges, and Peter Madsen was in fact arrested on those particular allegations of manslaughter. He will therefore proceed to a hearing where the judge will determine whether or not there is sufficient evidence to actually charge him with manslaughter. Following his arrest, a forensic examination was conducted in order to obtain DNA samples. The preliminary hearing was held on August 12th, the day after that. Peter also acknowledged at this hearing that Kim did, in fact, pass away on board the submarine. However, it was more of a freak event involving the hatch. In light of this revelation, they made the decision to withhold payment until they could determine how it might have occurred. And at this point, there's still no corpse. It appears as though she may have passed away on the submarine. So where exactly is she now? Thus, they also chose to accuse him of manslaughter committed negligently. However, until August 21st, none of this information was made available to the general public. Kim has been gone for 48 hours at this point, and the investigators are faced with sifting through a sizable body of water with little to no assistance or evidence from outside sources. They therefore have a lot of work ahead of them in the quest. They began by raising the submarine out of the sea, removing roughly 9,000 gallons of water, and making sure Kim's body was outside the submarine. Did Lieutenant Commander pass away? Among the first to board the submarine after it was emptied was Borg, who claimed to have seen what appeared to be flesh inside and characterized it as a total mess. Afterward, they observed a wet patch on their clothes that, according to them, smelled like the metallic scent of blood. Kim's jacket and other personal items were discovered on the submarine. Later that day, the police held a press conference where the chief of police stated that there was evidence indicating the submarine had been deliberately sunk, which contradicted PETA's initial claim that the submarine had sunk accidentally due to a malfunctioning ballast tank valve. Days passed with no sign of Kim or any information regarding her possible whereabouts. Furthermore, despite the fact that Peter was still in custody, he was not providing any assistance to the authorities or any information that could lead them to Kim. On August 16th, nevertheless, his charges were raised to include causing the death of another individual in situations that were extremely aggravating. A few days later, Peter, if you recall, leaped into the water as the submarine was sinking and was saved by a boat full of fishermen. One of those fishermen later testified that Peter told them, "Hold on a minute, I just have to go fix something on the submarine quickly before it sinks," as they were rescuing him. Kim's family also made a plea at about the same time, stating that Kim is seeing a lot of risky places as part of her job as a journalist, and we have been concerned about her on numerous occasions. These are the darkest days of our existence, before August 21st. At this point, Kim has been missing for 11 days, and the police decide to explain why they believe Peter should remain in custody on accusations of negligent manslaughter. Additionally, they disclose that he claimed at his hearing that Kim had perished in a strange accident on board the submarine after being struck by the 7-8 killer hatch. Peter stated that he was so disturbed by this event that he became frightened, wanted to bury Kim right away, and threw her body into the sea. All of this information was released in a press release. However, I think Kim's family was already aware of this, having been since the detention hearing. I mean, the entire hatch story just seems so absurd to me. It just doesn't make sense. First of all, they were never more than 30 minutes from land during their whole stay aboard the submarine. He also had the option to phone someone and say something like, "I don't understand why he felt the need to bury her at sea." Initially, unless he had something to conceal, especially before making any calls, seeking counsel, or requesting EMS to meet him at the accident scene. It is illogical. Okay, so on August 21st, the same afternoon that this information was made public, a news conference was conducted wherein they revealed that they had discovered a woman's torso that had washed up on Amanda's shore. According to reports, the torso had been slashed with phrases in order to keep it from floating. Additionally, they had attached themselves to the torso like metal straps. Furthermore, it's not common for a body to wash up on the shoreline, even if DNA testing was still required to determine who the torso belonged to. Thus, judgments were drawn. On August 23rd, 2 days later, forensic analysis was able to prove that Kim Val's torso did in fact belong to her, but it was unable to ascertain the cause of death. But despite Peter's continued insistence that it was an accident, it was evident that this wasn't the case. He was saying that he hadn't married her and hadn't cut the body to pieces. However, he was accused of indecently handling a corpse 2 days later. Following the discovery of Kim's torso, the remainder of her body and the Swedish canines that had been carefully trained were sought after with loathing. Even dogs were brought in, which I used to search for underwater scents. Thus, the current search effort is enormous. These dogs, the Danish police, the Swedish police, and the Danish Navy are all out looking for Kim's remaining body. On September 5th, a pretrial hearing took place in an open courtroom at PETA's request, lasting over 3 hours. Thus, media was present everywhere. During this session, Peter Berg continued to elaborate on his purportedly bizarre accident account. In essence, he asserted that he helped her open the submarine hatch while she was exiting it, and that when he let go, the hatch fell out of his fingers, and Kim died as a result of it falling on her head. It was a horrific accident, a calamity, he remarked. There was nothing a doctor could have done. Kim suffered serious injuries. Where she landed, there was a bloody puddle. She didn't have a pulse when I felt her neck for this hearing. They also requested access to Peter's computer because it was shown that he might have been interested in violent pornography. However, Peter insisted that his computer held trade secrets, therefore he refused to grant them access. Furthermore, they wanted him to have a mental assessment, which, once more, Peter truly didn't want to take place. Ultimately, however, the judge ruled that he had to turn up his computer and submit to a mental health assessment. Since none of his explanations could explain why Kim had been dismembered, he was ordered to remain in custody for an additional 4 weeks. On October 5th, more than a month and a half after Kim and Peter went missing on that submarine, they were still unable to locate the rest of her body. In order to help them estimate the best locations to discover her body, such as the location of the submarine and the area where her torso washed ashore, they thought of hiring an oceanographer. And on October 6th, the following day, after 50 divers had been searching for 200 acres for 56 days, they made a significant discovery when they discovered several plastic bags containing Kim's remaining remains deep below the ocean floor. Kim's clothes, head, legs, and a knife were all contained inside those plastic bags. The public was informed of this information the very following day, on October 7th. It was also discovered that her skull had no fractures. The entire narrative put forth by PETA of her unintentional death from the hatch is refuted by the lack of evidence of blunt force injuries to her head. In light of this revelation, Peter therefore devises a fresh theory. He is now asserting that he was outdoors on the submarine's deck when the air pressure suddenly fell and exhaust fumes began to fill the interior of the submarine, where Kim was still present. In an attempt to open the hatch and let Kim out, he rushes to it. However, it gets caught, making it impossible for him to open, and by the time he does, Kim has passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning. He now argues that he told a fake story in order to spare the family the graphic details, which is completely nonsensical considering how graphic the contents are in any case. Pete is still lying at this point. He continues to act as though it doesn't matter how. He's still acting as if he didn't mutilate her. Sadly, there is currently no concrete evidence that he was significant. Then, on October 11th, he said that he would no longer be cooperating with the police and that he would no longer like to be a part of the hearing. At this same moment, a saw with an orange handle was discovered in the cargo area, exactly where the submarine would have passed. Furthermore, I had trouble finding much information on what transpired with this. So, if they ever connected the dots or anything, it is said that a film crew was shooting Peter and Kim in his workshop 5 hours before to their submarine departure. And by October 30th, they managed to get video of a saw with an orange handle hanging behind Peter in his workshop. That was a significant turning point in this case because Peter eventually acknowledged mutilating Kim and hurling the pots into the water. Additionally, his crime was redefined to include sexual offenses under especially severe circumstances because they had discovered numerous stab wounds in Kim's groin area over the next few months. They located both of Kim's arms as well, and they gave up looking for Kim and Peter's sirens by January 12th. Peter Madsen was finally charged on January 16th with Kim Valle's premeditated and planned murder. In addition, he faced official charges for both sexual assault and indecent handling of a corpse. Before we go any further, let me just say how sad it is that Kim passed away in such a horrible way while she was only attempting to carry out her duties. Even though this is an extreme example, it actually brings to light a daily issue that affects women in both the home and workplace. The trial of Peter Madsen started in Copenhagen City Court on March 8th and was a complete media circus. This case received a great deal of attention on a local and international level. About 40 witnesses were expected to testify throughout the 12-day trial, and Peter would also be giving his version of the tale on the witness stand. And when he did make his case, he kind of had the upper hand because of his extensive technical understanding of submarines, which allowed him to develop intricate justifications that were challenging to refute. He also described in great detail how Kim's carbon monoxide poisoning led to her death. No matter how slick Peter was in that situation, his search history on the internet did him no favors. Prior to this, he had looked up stuff like beheading a female in pain on the internet. Additionally, instead of flour, it was discovered that Kim's body was supported by straps and pipes to aid in her sinking. They paid his workshop and discovered other comparable objects. Peter then attempted to change the story such that he was acting in deference to Kim's family. "What I will tell you today is a story that I did not want to tell anyone ever," he continued, paraphrasing. And in response to a question about the mutilation from the prosecutor, he answered, "What do you do when you have a big problem? It is divided into pieces." Several female witnesses were asked to testify on March 23rd. Analyzing Peter's relationships with women was the aim of this. These testimonies revealed that Peter had dark sexual fantasies and frequently attended fetish parties for individuals who identify as DSM. In texts to past lovers, he described himself as a perverted polyamorous who dreamed of a taboo-free place where all responsible adults could do whatever they wanted to each other. It appears that Peter was delving deeper into his dark, violent sexual fantasies in the months preceding Kim's murder, and he sent several potentially damaging texts. Now let me read you a few of the texts. Another phrase said, "I'll tie you up and pierce you with a skewer." The husband knife then appears, "And I examine your throat. The artery is where?" Read another text. "Remember that the name of his submarine is Nautilus, and you are going to be chained up against it." And there was another text that read, "Now that I'm a criminal, I might as well take your spouse and kids with me." The cherry on top was that they discovered a ton of pornographic violent content on his computer, including snuff films. In case you are unaware, a snuff film is essentially a videotape of an actual Murdoch, typically featuring women, an eyewitness. Peter stated that snuff flicks were more of a fascination when asked if he enjoyed them. Furthermore, I'm not sure if his interest was the reason behind Kim's death. Peter's psychological evaluation, which the prosecution submitted throughout the trial, revealed that he lacked empathy and a strong sense of guilt. Following the trial on April 25th, Peter Madsen was convicted guilty of premeditated murder and given a life sentence. Indeed, this is something of a momentous occasion for Denmark, because it is quite rare for someone to be given a life sentence for just one murder. Furthermore, the last sentence is just 16 years with the chance of parole after 12. It seems absurd to me that someone who was so vile to someone and shows no regret or shame for it should be eligible for parole after only 12 years. Thomas Jousting, Peter's biographer, has now acknowledged that, looking back, Peter was a narcissist and a manipulator. He claimed that because of his imaginative views, everyone around him gave him permission to act in this manner. The fact that Peter was able to keep all of these sinister urges and impulses hidden from people closest to him seems absurd to me. After all of this was revealed, Thomas was interviewed for that. You can also see how horrifying and upsetting it was for him to discover that someone he thought of as a close friend was actually someone he barely knew at all. Peter attempted to challenge the verdict as soon as he was given a sentence. Nonetheless, after spending just 3 months, his sentence was upheld in 2020. Because of a bomb threat, Peter was able to break out of prison before being discovered, captured, and taken back. Thus, hopefully, this will not help him in any way with parole. I also wanted to briefly discuss the media's coverage of this case and the criticism that the media received for its reporting, which spoke a great deal about Peter and his life and his misdeeds, rather than concentrating on him. And what a dedicated and motivating woman she is. I think the best word to describe some of the media coverage is voyeuristic, as one journalist put it. Family and friends of Kim discovered the Kim Valley Memorial Fund to preserve her legacy after reading some of the archived media source stories that covered the case. The International Women's Media Fund uses the proceeds as a grant to assist female journalists.